up next, I would like to invite Dato Ami Moris, who's going to have a conversation with Tan Sri Wahid Omar around, advancing the gender parity theme. May I invite you on stage, please? Can we turn on Amy's mic, please?
Mine is on, right? Thank you.
Okay, we've got someone coming.
You have to press inside that.
Okay, cool. Is it on?
Done.
Okay, awesome. And of course, Murphy's Law as well, my battery is actually running very, very low. Okay, so Tan Sri, this is the second year running. I've had the honor of having a conversation with my former boss, slightly on the intimidating side, but let's have a go. Bursa Malaysia, Tan Sri, is one out of only 4 emerging markets globally that has women on board representation over 20% of their top 100 PLCs. Woohoo! So a huge recognition indeed for Bursa Malaysia for making the great strides in ensuring that women on board representation, and this is of course, as Tan Sri Zainal has mentioned, partly driven by the listing requirements of requiring at least one woman, only one woman, unfortunately, on board that has come into full effect as of June 2023, June of this year. So the 30% target of women on board at C-suites and senior management, as we all know, Tan Sri, merely represents what we call a tipping point. It underpins the data which shows that the 30% threshold, right, is likely to result in a more diverse and inclusive workforce, a workforce that has been shown to have a high correlation with better performance and resilience. Again, Tan Sri Zainal was emphasizing that. To me, what I always like to say is that, in other words, this is a real business case for successful companies. In fact, when I was the CEO of Maybank Investment Group, people used to turn to me and say, why DEI, right? Because for a lot of people, they felt like that's a woman's issue, that's a woman's agenda. For me, no, it is the battle for real talent. So now, with Bursa Malaysia having achieved 31% of women on board for the top 100 PLCs, naturally, we are elevating our ambitions to have the 30% of women on board representation to cover all PLCs, as per the recommendations of the Malaysian Code of Corporate Governance. And perhaps above all, for Tan Sri to do us all a personal favor to tackle the 19 companies that still have all male boards, Tan Sri. So that's a personal request. And in order to meet that 30% threshold across all PLCs, we will need 350 women to join the boardrooms of Bursa's PLCs. Only 350. So I think we easily have 100 here. So to all the women out there, yes. So Tan Sri, it is a great pleasure to have you with us today, celebrating the graduating mentees and welcoming our new cohort. So you are a very special individual, Tan Sri. You have 3 hats, all 3 hats that are at the forefront of all boardroom conversations. You are the chair of Bursa Malaysia, right? That actually embodies our capital market. You are also the chair of WWF, which really is at the forefront of climate action. And you are also the chair of My SDG Foundation, recently established, sponsored by the Ministry of Finance, to propel Malaysia's achievements of SDGs as we head towards 2030. So my first question to you, Tan Sri, what would be your 3 key messages? You stand on the hilltop of Bukit Kewangan, literally, and as you survey the battlefield, right? What would be the 3 key messages, maybe observations that you would like to share in terms of the landscape in relation to diversity, equity, and inclusion?
Well, thank you, Dato Ami, for those very kind remarks. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me to be here this afternoon, and thank you to all of you for being here. I must say that I've never been more nervous recently. Seeing so many powerful women right in front of me. Of course, I'm privileged also to have my former cabinet colleague, Dr. Sri Rohani, to be here, and Maybank colleague, Dr. Asnita here as well. Now, how do I start? Well, perhaps let me begin by congratulating all of you for achieving what you have achieved today. So I think it's incredible that within a short period of time, the 30% club had been able to make a huge impact to Corporate Malaysia. So I must say that in many cases, whatever is being done by the authorities, by whether it's actually Securities Commission or Bursa Malaysia, we've been truly inspired by the work done by the 30% club. So again, congratulations.
Thank you. All the volunteers in the room.
Now, if I may perhaps add the 3 things, I think firstly, if you look at the numbers, they do speak for itself. So if I can just speak a bit about the achievement. No, it is no mean feat, and you spoke about what are we going to do with others. So I have got no doubt that Corporate Malaysia will continue to embrace the spirit and intention of embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion, especially when it comes to gender diversity. To me, it's a matter of progression. In fact, I'm actually more nervous about the boys nowadays, because if you look at the enrollment at public universities here in Malaysia, it's about 2/3 women and 1/3 men. And the female students are doing much better than the men. And you see that at the entry level in Corporate Malaysia, we're seeing more women and so on. And my view is actually over time, as you progress, there'll be a lot more supply of great women leaders from whom the corporates are able to actually pick from. So it's actually a natural progression, and it's getting there. So I've got no doubt in that. But it is also equally important for all of us to truly embrace the spirit and intention. So as much as you spoke about that 19 companies that still have got 0 women representation, there is one company that's gone to the other extreme by having all female board. So again, that's not the spirit and intention. I think it's very important. Diversity means diversity. So inclusion means that no one will be left behind. So that's actually perhaps the first point. The second point is in terms of the overall context of ESG. I think it's important for all of us to truly embrace sustainability and the 3 elements of environmental, social, and governance. So governance, I think all of us have been in corporate sector for a while, a lot of emphasis on that. Social issues, that came into prominence during the COVID period when we had a number of Malaysian companies, glove-making companies, and plantation companies being subjected to the withhold release order by the US Customs and Border Protection Agency. And I think that issue has come to the fore. So I think it's actually important. And the issue of DI is, say, within the context of social equity as well. The third one is in respect for environmental. I think wearing my WWF Malaysia hat, no, it's not World Wrestling Federation. It's the Worldwide Fund for Nature, where I think the issue of climate change is actually real, as Prof. Sanjay mentioned earlier on. It is real. Climate change is real, global warming is real, and it is important for all of us to truly embrace this issue and do what we can to keep the rise in global temperature to within 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial level. Now, at the global level, we are glad that 90% of global economies have committed to be net zero in terms of greenhouse gas emissions as by mid-century, 2050 or 2060, and that included Malaysia, that committed to be a net zero nation by or as early as 2050. And at the corporate level, it is also important for every single one of us to commit to be a net zero as early as 2052. And looking at our carbon footprint, where we can to reduce our carbon emissions, where we can't, to help others to mitigate the emissions by supporting them by way of buying carbon credits and so on. So I think that's actually my second perspective for that. The third is probably in the context of the wider sustainable development goals. Now, as a country, we have committed to attain the 17 SDGs. And as you know, the 17, they start from no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being. We're talking about quality education, and number 5 is about gender equality. And then you have number 10, which is about reduced inequalities. Now, I think as we truly embrace and work towards achieving all these 17 SDGs, the element of gender equality and reduced inequality will have to be embedded across the board. And I think it's therefore important in every single work that we do, embrace the spirit of equity, inclusion, and diversity into everything that we do. And within that context, just a quick introduction into my SDG Foundation. Thank you for highlighting that. They were set up by the government. A couple of years ago, we got organized last year, and we are actually working with the UN agencies. The idea would be to help government towards achieving the UN SDGs. Now, make no mistake that in terms of the primary responsibility is actually with the government and the whole nation, so if I may, and the main source will come from the government budgets, basically. But there'll be situations where some parts of the community may have been left behind, may not have come under the formal budget, and therefore this is why government set up this foundation with initial funding from the government. We're starting with 20 million ringgit from the government, and from that amount, we hope to be able to actually raise additional money from UN agencies and also from corporate sector to then look at specific projects to make sure that no one is left behind. So be it some indigenous communities or the stateless people, refugees, and various others. And within that context, this element of gender equality is always embedded in that respect. So let me perhaps stop there.
Yeah, so it's interesting your key messages in terms of, because ultimately as the chair of Bursa Malaysia, you represent capital walking the talk, right? So with DEI and a lot of the sustainability goals, there's a lot of talk. So if you could, this is a room full of potential boardroom leaders. What would you say are the 3 actionable items that you would like everyone to converge on, right? 3 simple things that all of us can do.
Well, I always say that we all have to do what we can within our circle of influence. So I think first of all, get it done. So I think within the context of embracing diversity, equity, and inclusion, just make sure that your organization would do it holistically. Now, of course, within the context of Malaysia, when we ask everyone else to do it, we must also do it. Chino and I just came back from our board of SAI, and we're always mindful of leading by example. So on the part of Bursa Malaysia, for example, we have until recently 4 out of 10 board members being female. But with the departure of Puan Sharifah to Tabung Haji, we have lost one, so we're now down to 3 out of 9, basically. But yeah, so we must embrace that, and I think we must also go beyond the gender diversity at the board level. It must go down to the management level too. And I think we're happy that half of our CEO and CEO -1 pool is actually female, and female also makes up 47% of our vice presidents and above. So again, making sure that we actually do it and get it done, first of all. I think secondly, it is important for corporates to then start to look at, okay, what about performance, right? So I think as much as we embrace diversity, which will lead to the strengthening of that organization, make no mistake about that. And we've seen how companies like Maybank, for example, they embrace diversity and able to not only take the lead, but also maintain the lead, given the diversity of the people that we have. And then you go down to look at the actual delivery of performance. And we felt that in many cases, some corporates over the years, in recent years, have not performed as well as they should. And this where, based on the feedback from the corporate sector and institutional investors, we came up with a PLC transformation program for corporates to embrace. And I think that's something that we hope that corporates will take notice of and embrace it and start to implement it. And the third one is to look at, again, beyond gender, look at the overall bench strength, and how do you make sure that your organization will be sustainable in its complete sense. And among other things, I tend to look at 3 items. Number one is about when you hire leaders, make sure that they have the prerequisites of good and sustainable leadership qualities. What they well is about having integrity, competence, and humility. Integrity, as you know, is about doing the right thing when no one is watching. Competence is about having the right skills and knowledge to do the job well. And humility is probably the least spoken about. It's about treating people with mutual respect. It's about staying grounded to your roots. It's about knowing that we will all live in this world for greater purpose in life rather than for our self-interest. And humility is also about knowing that we don't know everything and we need teamwork in order to succeed. So if you have these 3 qualities, the ones that you point on your board and on your management team, I think inshallah you'll do well. And the second part is about the need to strike the right balance between internal hire and external, internal promotion and external hire. I think, again, this is also within the context of embracing diversity. So sometimes we don't look after our people internally. So having that proper leadership succession planning and talent development program is actually important. So I think that's something which I think the board must and can do. And the third one is for all of us to truly embrace, again, this issue of diversity, because the questions are often asked, how do you know whether you are embracing it or you're not embracing it, right? I tend to say, look, if the composition of your board, of your management team is disproportionate to the environment that you operate in or the stated purpose of your organization, so chances are you're not truly embracing diversity. And in that context, I thought it's useful for me to perhaps highlight this concept of affinity to prejudice continuum. Now, what I mean by that is actually, as a human being, it is very natural for all of us to have affinity towards people from the same background as we do. Same gender,
same university.
Same university, same state, same ethnicity, same religion, and so on. Very natural. But if you're not careful, you don't control your emotions, it's very easy that it will become favoritism, right? And if you don't control it further, it becomes cronyism. And at the very extreme, it becomes prejudice to the other people who don't come from the same background as you do. I mean, I have worked in an organization where half of the management team came from the same school, okay? Or I've come across an organization or several organizations where the management team members came from the same state as the CEO, for example. I've come across organizations where the management team comprised of only UK graduates because CEO was from UK, right? So honestly, that is not helpful. I also have found out, I'm an accountant, where CEO is accountant, and suddenly you have half the management team being accountants, or with an accounting background, and that's not helpful. So again, my view is that look at your composition. If it is disproportionate to the environment and the stated purpose, then chances are there's that element of favoritism, bordering on cronyism, and even at the other extreme,
prejudice.
Right.
It's funny, as I listen to you, Tan Sri, I realize this habit of like everything comes in threes, and I think it's a very Maybank practice that's inherited from you, that everything, 3 points and everything structured around 3 things.
Probably because we have limited capacity.
But one thing, in our previous conversation, Tan Sri, what actually I found very inspiring was the fact that you gave an example when you were in Maybank and you were the president and CEO about actually intervention, constructive affirmative action, right, when you were the president. And when you were saying that, how do you know whether you are actually diverse and inclusive enough is your reference point is basically the communities around you. So maybe that, again, that is a sharing that would, that I found inspiring that perhaps, you could also share in the sense that, sometimes it is very difficult when everybody in the boardroom looks like each other, and for you to suddenly raise your hand and say, perhaps we should introduce, right? So maybe, and we spoke about inclusivity in terms of ethnicity, right? In terms of age, socioeconomic backgrounds, geographies. I suddenly was made to realize, like, I don't know of any board members from Sabah and Sarawak, for example, right? And then also, Orang Asal, right? Our indigenous communities. So maybe that's the moral courage that, you could share to inspire all of us here.
Right. Maybe a few examples. 12 years ago, Maybank IB was hiring 20 fresh graduates as part of the Management Apprentice Program. So out of that 20, there were only 4 Buputras, and they were all from Klang Valley, mainly, and vast majority, I think probably 90% from UK and Australian universities, right? Then I said, look, this is not right. So then when I asked how is it done, then they went through the aptitude test and so on. And it's actually natural, therefore, that because of all the screening, it will favor children from privileged background, Klang Valley, from UK and Australian universities, as opposed to the local universities and so on, because of the command of language and so on. 0 from Sabah, Sarawak, and probably 1 from East Malaysia. Then we said, look, we're going to intervene, affirmative action. We're going to make it a point to make sure that we will accord due recognition for the handicaps. And therefore, we made a point that we must have people from the East Malaysia, Sabah, Sarawak, into the final list of 20. In the end, actually, we got it. Right? So I think it is important for us to be able to intervene and do the right thing, and rather than leaving things to process and chance. So when you see the outcomes actually not fair and equitable, intervene. Right? So that's one thing that you must do. So the other example is probably, sorry, China, maybe I can give the example of Bursa Malaysia. Now, in our search for board candidates, right, we were looking for people from the capital market background in our most recent selection process. And we saw the list, a large number of them came from Maybank, okay? and actually, Maybank being the market leader, right? So, so especially when we're looking for ladies, right, female board members. Then, unfortunately, we already have 3 board members formerly from Maybank. Right? So, I'm from Maybank, and Dato Omar, our CEO, was formerly with Maybank, and Tan Sri Farid is also was also from Maybank as well. So, if we go by, again, normal process, the 4th person will be a Maybanker. So you will have 4 out of 10, 40%, and that's not good. All right. So I actually had to tell the board members, look, we must be, conscious. Sorry, no one from Maybank until 1 of the 3 actually leave the company. So again, my point here is actually you cannot leave things to normal process, and when you see something is actually not right, you actually have to intervene, because if you don't deal with it, that will create a perception. Yep. As you know, it's not just about the potential issue, but also the perception. And if people have got different perception of your organization, then it will become very, very negative. So my point here is actually, when you see things, you feel it's actually not right, don't hesitate to actually intervene. At the end of the day, we must be guided by the spirit, intention of being diverse, being equitable, and being inclusive. Yeah.
So Tan Sri, thank you so much. I think definitely the lessons is that moral courage comes from within, right? And no matter how hard the challenges are, one really does need to stand up and do what is right, and unquestionable integrity is doing the right thing when nobody is watching. So Tan Sri, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Dato Ami. If I may, perhaps, given the fact that tomorrow is Hari Malaysia, so
yes,
again,
that's why we're all in batik.
But very quick one, I find that we Malaysians, we are so hard on ourselves. We tend to be very negative. We tend to look at things as being greener on the other side, as opposed to on our side, the glass as being half empty as opposed to being half full, and we tend to focus on things that divide us rather than things that unite us. But on balance, we have run multinational organizations operated in many countries, and we find that actually, although there are many things that can be improved in Malaysia, we're actually not that bad. So, I mean, this gender diversity is one of them. And if you have heard, the tabling of the Malaysian Madani economic narrative, clear plans, supported by the National Energy Transition Roadmap, and yesterday, on Monday, you had the review of the 12 Malaysia Plan. So you can see that there have been many progress, but there have been many areas for improvements too. But the point I wanted to make here, no one is perfect, but if we can all be constructive and do what we can within our circle of influence, and always be guided by the spirit and intention of Rukun Negara, not the 5 principles that we swear by, but also the objectives, which eventually is all about creating this prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable nation. I think, inshallah, Malaysia will do a lot well, and I'm positive on that, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you.